Hello and welcome to this video on mixing techniques for performance style mixers and CV control and modulation over typical mixer features. Here I'll be demoing the After Later Audio Nightlife Mixer Series, and here's what's to come. This video is sponsored by After Later Audio. So in this video, I'll be making patches that you can apply to various performance style mixers and lots of other modules. But I'll be demoing and using the Nightlife series modules from After Later Audio, giving a demo here of the Bartender, the Barback, the Send VCA, Mingles, Cast Iron, and the USB 2-channel interface. There's a lot of features to talk and walk through here, so skip ahead to the timing on screen if you'd just like to jump into some sounds and techniques. The core of the series is the Bartender, a 4 stereo channel performance or production mixer in 24 HP. Each channel has 2 inputs, left and right for stereo if you set the switch to stereo, or dual mono inputs if you set that to mono. And setting that to mono will sum those inputs together. We have a pan CV and a manual pan control, level CV, working like a stereo VCA, and level slider, and we have input gain to add extra level to the inputs if things need a bit of a level boost, or to push it into saturation when you want it. We have an effects send, which has a manual level control, and that can route to send 1, send 2, or mute the send in the middle of that switch. You can also set the send to be pre or post channel controls, and we have a mute switch that is muted in the top position, on in the center, and momentary muted when you press that switch down. And finally, there's a Q switch if you'd like to route that to the headphone Q and mix system. The 4 channels are all the same, and then we have our output section with master level control, LED VU meter, 2 stereo sends, 2 stereo returns, your main left and right outputs, a mono summed output, which will sum everything on the module, expanding that channel count out if you want to work in mono. And we have our headphone section here with headphone out, headphone level, and the crossfading mix between monitoring the main mix and those cues that you turn on the channel switches. The Barback is a 10 HP expander, and that adds 2 more channels with the exact same controls as the Bartender. And that connects into the Bartender with ribbon cables around the back of the modules. The Send VCA is 2 HP and adds 8 CV inputs to control up to 8 send effects levels on the Bartender and Barbacks. The Send VCA expands into the Bartender and the Barback, and you need to change jumper settings on the back of those modules for this external control. When you have the Send VCA set up, these send controls when there's no voltage work as normal, and when there is a voltage present you've plugged in some modulation, they become maximum level controls and attenuators for the incoming voltages. We then have Mingles, which is 12 HP, and this is 2 sets of 3-channel mixers with onboard modulation and panning, and that's a collaboration with Robots Are Red. There's also Cast Iron, which is a 4 HP simple stereo VCA and panner. And finally, I have the USB 2-channel interface, which is a 4 HP, 2 input, stereo, 2 output module, with a chunky USB connector and input and output level controls. Mingles, Cast Iron, and the USB 2-channel interface all work with jumper cables to expand in and out of the modules, and these then can all expand into the Bartender system. It's a really flexible system for creating submixes, sub-expansions into each other, or connecting multiples together to create a much larger mixer, or with plenty of modulation options. That's a lot of talking for a lot of modules and features, so the patches are on screen for you to skip around. Without further ado, let's dive in. So here's a patch that came from exploring the Send VCAs and just wanting to create some swirling, ambient, chord tone, ambient modular patching. This is 4 oscillators into the 4 channels of the Bartender, and I'm just using the Bartender and the Send VCA here. Going through the channels and turning the Send down. The first oscillator has a sequence to it. There's an LFO, just bringing that level up and down. And then the other oscillators here. Slower LFO there. A bit faster. Just fading in and out as a chord tone. As I bring the Send levels up, when you're using the Send VCA, these act as a maximum level. So think of them as attenuators for your voltage coming in, much like the channel faders become attenuators for the level CV inputs. So across 8 free-running LFOs here, sounds are just fading up and down. It might actually fade into a Send while it's off, so we get this constantly evolving sound, or while it's at its peak of its level, an LFO might be fading in and out, sending to my effects chain. It's nice just letting oscillators and sound drift around for a bit of ambient patching. So a nice thing here if you're working in mono is that coming out of the mono output here will sum any stereo signals together. So by using the mono out and stereo inputs, you can use the panners to crossfade between those inputs. That doubles up the input channel count, where a single Bartender goes from 4 stereo to 8 mono. Add a Barback, you go from 6 stereo to 12 mono. Another Barback, a Mingles, a cast iron. You can build up a huge amount of mono mixing if that's what you need. Now just going through the channels here. The first Barback channel is just a kick drum, set to mono, single input, nice and simple. The second channel on the Barback, I'm using panning and a stereo input, so setting the switch to stereo anytime you do this, to crossfade between a snare drum there on the left and a clap on the right. The first Bartender channel has 2 inputs, again set to stereo, and this time some modulation. The left in is a more 16th note rhythm playing white noise kind of hi-hat, and to the right is an 808 maraca sample, more focused on 8th note rhythms. And this is happening with an LFO modulating the pan. So that top end percussion is kind of going to sway in rhythm and tone as it crossfades between those sources. Then have another channel, stereo ins again, hi-hat on one side, rimshot on the other. On this channel, again, stereo input. The left is a kind of sub-filtered acidic patch, and the right is just PWM, a pulse wave straight out of my oscillator. I'm using the level input there for the stereo CV to sidechain this against the kick. Hopefully you can hear that ducking. So a quick little performance here on the mixer. So let's take a look here at the sends on Bartender, the additional send VCA for modulating them, and also returning effects back into channels rather than effects returns. This is something that I've done for a couple of reasons for a long time on different bits of hardware mixers, But here on Bartender we don't have a return level, so the first and most obvious reason to come back into a channel is to have level control. If I send channel 1 of Bartender here out to send 1, this is Drad doing some granular bits and some reverb from beads, and that's returning here on these orange cables on channel 2 of the Bartender. And simply, I now have level control. I also have panning, which I can modulate, and there's the level VCA as well for things like chopping these effects up for gated style effects. Another advantage here though is that by having them go into a channel, we can continue to route them either back into themselves for feedback, so sending send 1 to send 1 now, and we get all sorts of interesting feedback loops here with these particular effects modules. But also, we can create an effects chain with the sends themselves. Send 2, coming back here on yellow cables, is the Vino echo. Let's send some sound to it. Nice stereo echo. And again, we now have level control. We could send back to itself with send 2 there. Start to build up some interesting feedback loops with the Vino echo. But what we could do is send to one effect and then the other and change this on the fly. So I'm sending my dry sound here to send 2, the Vino echo, which comes back here on this channel. Let's send the echo to send 1 and turn that up. Unmute it. If I modulate channel 1, I've set up the send VCA's first 4 channels to be the Bartender's 4 channels. The sends now become the maximum level for that send. They're like attenuators for the incoming voltages. Now here's a way to do, quote, better send effects. If we're using the send on Barback and Bartender itself, you can go to send 1 or 2, or be off in the middle, but not both. And you can't then CV between them because that's switched. And as I say, you can't do both. Now what I have here is a very simple sound, just a repeating 10-step sequence that's coming into the channel here. That's also been split in a splitter cable, and a copy of that signal comes into cast iron. And you could also do this on a Mingles if you wanted. So the input here is this sound. And if I remove these cables, I'm using panning as a routing mechanism, because panning doesn't have to be left and right placement in the stereo field to route to different effects. Now all the way to the left, and this orange cable is a delay effect, and that delay effect, although you can't see it, just comes back into the return on the mixer. The right output, purple cables, is a pitched up reverb effect. So if I pan right and bring this up, and listen as I pan, we're moving between routing from pitched up granularized reverb across to a kind of wonky delay. That's both of them in the center. And as this is pre-effect, I'm not panning like a crossfader from one effect to the other. I'm choosing where I route to. We get those effects trailing back into the main mixer. So I have 2 signals here. One is for level, and just on certain steps, this will envelope in the effect. So this is working much like the send effect, send VCA there on the mixer. And then have another signal which will pan so every 5 steps. Now the downside here is really that you don't have this whole send bus across barbacks and bartenders here, but for single sounds This allows you to be very modular and dynamic in your effects routings. So this patch started with me looking at the overdrive on the channels, because you've got some gain here on the inputs, but it kind of expanded into me creating this whole little performance kind of patch. Now, this is all clean, but already full of character. The gain's all the way down. But listen to this kind of afterburn that happens when I just crank the gain up full. It's really lovely overdrive for this bass sound. That's gain all the way down. And all the way up. And there's subtlety in between, but let's just leave it slammed up. So let's create a little bit of a mini performance here. I'll annotate what I'm doing on screen and just have some fun with the patch before we move on. So let's take a look at 4 levels of audio destruction. It's important to point out that the Bartender, Barback and everything else here isn't meant as a kind of character mixer or saturating mixer, but you can get to that, which I enjoy, so let's really push it into what I'd consider destruction rather than just some overdrive. I have a beat here, it's already pre-mixed out of the Modback Trinity, coming into channel 1, and that's all we're currently listening to. Now with the channel gain, we can push up into some nice distortion. And as this is variable, around halfway, has what I'd consider a more kind of high-end, classy saturation. Certainly if you listen to the kick, it's just got that bit of oomph that's going to help it in a mix. But let's just slam that. So level 1 of audio destruction, slam the input gain. For level 2, let's actually use a send, and this is the orange cable here, coming out of the send, turn the send 1 up full, and send 1 just patches straight back into channel 2. There's nothing else going on, there's nothing in the send, so here's the gain down, and sending this into another channel for more level and more saturation. So level 2, send back to another channel for even more level. Level 3, slam the gain on that second channel that it's sent to. And for the 4th level of destruction here, let's create feedback by sending channel 2, which is the return of the send, back to itself for a feedback loop. And this, if we took the drums out, would get into all sorts of no input mixing feedback techniques. So one really nice use of the USB 2 channel, really simple audio interface, is to use an iPad or a laptop for a big stereo send and return effects chain. And over on Bartender here, I have this complex, heavily modulated audio from Immutable Instruments Elements. That's coming in with an LFO to pan the channel around. And I'm using the send on these orange cables to send stereo audio to the input of the USB 2 channel, and the output is coming from my computer back into the return here on the mixer. The USB cable simply sending this into Ableton Live, where I have a couple of effects chains, and if you've got software, you can probably build a very comprehensive and engaging effects chain very cheaply compared to adding more modules. We'll take a quick look at the plugins and what's going on here in Ableton Live. This simply shows up as USB audio codec. I've selected that as the input and output audio, and have two channels, both set to monitor the input, 1 and 2 here. The first channel then has a grain delay for some pitch shift, and erosion for some kind of noisy crunch on the start of the notes. The echo device doing some nice tape echo, and a big reverb set to a low level but a big long 60-second reverb. And then the second channel, so these run in parallel, some slow feedback rich phasing, the vinyl distortion with some vinyl crackle. Nice to add some noise and character into the back of these things. Some frequency shifting in stereo, but that's actually set to be a ring modulator, cabinet emulator. And I quite like adding cabinets as a kind of tonal imprint over the effects. It gives them a bit of distance and a separate tone to the input, if you like. And some more echo on that one, and these both blend at my output here for the stereo return back into the Bartender system. So it's a simple audio input and output device for recording and returning audio, but I'm liking using it as an effects send. That and say an iPad next to a modular system, I think it'd be quite a compelling and powerful system for adding effects to modular. Classic technique for mangling and playing with audio is to use found sounds, radios, odd bits of audio, playing into some percussive chopping and effects. And in a rather kind of maybe weird, self-indulgent way, here's me playing a demo of myself, a demo I made recently. Eurorack, hello me. And with an envelope down here, I'm chopping this up in a VCA. You could of course do this with a sampler module. This is just a really quick example with a USB 2-channel audio here. Just playing audio out of my laptop into the VCA on the channel, chopping that up with an envelope, some pan modulation and some effects. Set them against the beat. I mean, where else can you go on the internet for live Safari cam watching flamingos chopped against dubstep breaks? Just another silly example of some live audio input, but legitimately live Safari trail cam stuff is great. Wind, noise, bits of animals in the background. Kind of a never-ending live varying source for random noises. So here I'm looking at audio rate modulation, the point at which you can audio rate modulate from basic to a bit more advanced, keeping that musical, and also creating dry-wet blends between your basic inputs and your audio rate effects. So stripping things back, here's my input, which is a triangle wave modulated through an external VCA with an envelope, and I've removed all the pitch sequencing for now. I'm going to use this as my audio rate modulator. Let's listen to it in another channel. And it's an oscillator sine wave in tune with this triangle oscillator. They're two separate oscillators. I'll add a pitch sequence to my main source, just a 3-note basic arpeggio there. And let's first use this to modulate level for some AM effects. And one thing I like to modulate is panning, creates this kind of like head in a ring mod stereo audio rate effect. If you've headphones on, that should be vastly different. And let's add a pitch sequence to this audio rate source. And this is kind of like your basic audio rate modulation, although I'm using different pitch sequences for the oscillators. The panning and the level there give really nice effects. Now if you wanted to create a dry-wet blend, so still have access to this dry sound, you could actually audio rate modulate the send VCA, which is what I'm doing here, use the send set to pre, so that we can actually turn this off and it not be dependent on what's coming in here in its level, and send the send back onto a channel. So here the send output on this yellow cable is coming back to channel 2. And we can hear that audio rate modulation. I have a dry wet blend. And where that works well, thinking of modular and layering here, is to then modulate this signal. We could take, say, an LFO to modulate its pan. I could use this audio rate kind of destructed sound and its panning to feed my effects, which is a bit crushed delay line here. And rather than sending out to the delay from this sound, I can keep the dry clarity and create this murky, panning, audio rate shifted overtone. If you've got this far in the video, drop a hard sync in the comments and let me know what mixers you're using in your systems. Head to patreon.com/DivKid to support the work that I do, join my community and gain access to lots of exclusives. Thanks for watching, hit like and subscribe, that all helps out the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!